Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week you'll receive insight, inspiration, and advice for living your purpose and making an impact as a conscious leader. You'll also hear inspirational stories of other conscious leaders who are living and leading from a place of mission, vision, and purpose. Get ready to be enlightened, empowered, and transformed with me, your host, Jennifer Sport. I am super excited to welcome as a guest to the show today, Reena Watts. She is the host of the Better Call Daddy podcast, and she is an expert at helping people be seen. Reena, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for this conversation. I mean, I could talk to you for days. Tell us a little bit more about your podcast and about how you help people become seen. I've seen, some of your work and had the opportunity to speak with you, and I just think you are a super connector. So tell us more about that.
Thank you. Yeah. So it all started, it's been going on pretty much my whole life, but I would say that my first job was at Jerry Springer, and I started off as an intern where I was hanging out with the guests and listening to the associate producers on the phone and how to book a story and how to sound animated and how to talk people into doing crazy things on national television. And I was like, I can do that, and I would love to do that. And then once I started getting on the phone and befriending people, I was like, oh, wow. If you become friends with somebody over the phone, you can get them to come to Chicago. You can get them to come to your lunch and learns. You can get them to come to your financial seminars. You can get them to come to entrepreneurial events. And I've just realized throughout my career, people come to your events, people come to your podcast, people, want to collaborate with you if they feel like you hear them, you relate to them, you want to lift them up. And so the Better Call Daddy show is all of the people that I've connected with along the way, the people that I've found interesting, the people that I've followed their path. And I'm highlighting some of those stories, sharing them with my dad, and my dad's my best friend, so he's weighing in with his wisdom.
I've had the opportunity to listen to some of your podcasts, and I just absolutely love it. And it's amazing how many different stories there are out there. I often say this too, because I help people, find and live their purpose, right? But it's like, what is there? Almost 8 billion of us on the planet, and every person is unique. Every person does have, a different journey. So I would imagine you'll never run out of things to talk about or cover on your podcast. It's amazing.
I was on the Clubhouse app last night. It's this new, social media app. It's only audio right now. And there was this guy, and he's like a celebrity photographer, and he's got probably 20, 30,000 followers on Instagram, but he's new on this platform. It's in beta mode, and we're all kind of starting off at the same place. And what he said to the audience last night was, every single person on here matters. Every single person has value, and every single person has traveled a different path and has something to offer.
Yeah.
And I love that it's an even playing ground right now. We're all going through this COVID thing, right?
Yes.
We're all stuck at home. We are all experiencing
Yes. I think you're reading my mind, because I was just about to ask you that question and bring up COVID. And just to say that, offline, you and I were talking about some of this, that how COVID, despite all of the hardships that have surfaced as a result of it, there are also some blessings in it. And we were talking specifically about, as entrepreneurs, doing work that brings us joy. And that's really one of the main focuses of this podcast, right, is to inspire other people who are feeling called to make a change, or who are already following that path to continue to, do that work to bring themselves joy, and that anything is possible in terms of having that creative autonomy, being able to get paid to do what they love. My whole point being, my question for you was really in regard to, conscious leadership or purpose or mission-driven leadership. What significance do you think that has in regard to someone being able to be their best selves as a leader?
What I was going to say is that the more vulnerable you are with others, that is contagious, and it encourages team members and leaders to also be vulnerable and care about others more. And I think that is so important in the work that we do, to be human and to be vulnerable. That just creates such a better relationship with the people around you. And I've noticed that even in the podcast that I'm doing, like the more vulnerable I am, the better the stories get too.
Oh, I love that. And that ties to what you said at the beginning of our conversation about how people want to be able to relate to you. I believe that as well, that, the best leaders aren't perfect, and nobody wants a perfect leader. And why would you want to pretend that you're someone that you're not, right? Because there are these people looking up to you and following you, and you want to be authentic and, like you said, vulnerable in how you're showing up out there. To me, it's important to really lead by example, really to be able to be real, like you said, be vulnerable. But many of us have been conditioned to believe, right, that vulnerability is a weakness, when it's actually, I think it's a superpower.
Not only that, but like, wouldn't you love a leader or a boss who's like, yeah, I've been fired, it sucked. Or, yeah, I've taken jobs that weren't a good fit and it sucked. Or, yeah, I've been a people pleaser and it sucked. Like, wouldn't you like a boss who actually welcomed those conversations and didn't judge you for feeling that way?
Yes, it's about balance though, right? Because like I would say to someone, yeah, that sucked. Obviously, from a growth standpoint, everything is a learning opportunity, but it doesn't mean that it sucked or that it didn't suck. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I did a post on this recently about toxic positivity. Oh, be positive, be grateful, be this, be that, oh, you got fired, it's a learning opportunity. Yes, all of that is true.
Can we acknowledge how I felt initially with that news?
Yes, all of it is true, but it still sucked. And what I find is missing, especially kind of in the online space and in parts of the personal development industry, is the how. You got let go from your job, or you lost your business, and it sucks. And yes, it's a learning opportunity, but how do you get from how you're feeling now to where you want to be? I feel like a lot of that it's not talked about often enough, right?
I can give you an example. So I was at a company where the position was actually even created for me. Like, my husband worked for the parent company and I got hired at the subsidiary, and, he was talking about some of the work that I had done as a freelancer, and they were like, oh, we could really use somebody like that in-house. And the position started off amazing. I was like reporting to the CEO, and, I got to make a corporate video, and we got to go to a trade show together. My husband was like, explaining the product from the technical standpoint, because he was the engineer and I was the marketer. So I just made things look pretty, and then he described what the product did. But I really wanted mentorship within the organization. I felt like there was a whole lot of tech speak, that nobody knew the elevator pitch, that I'm trying to market this thing where, people outside the organization know what the product does. I tried to interview even managers within the organization and directors, sales leaders. And they were like, Reena, if you ask those questions, you're going to get fired. It was such a fear culture. You know what I mean? And the two different sales directors were like competitive with each other within the organization. Like they didn't even like, they had the same customers and they didn't even share contacts. Right. So I reached out to the CEO who was remote. We only got together like, I don't know, maybe once a month or something. He flew in and was like, hey, I really would love a mentor within the organization, like that's here locally in Chicago that I can like grab coffee with and like ask my questions to. And he was like, and so there was actually a director at the parent company who was a female and she was a director. And I kind of really related to her. Her and I had actually gone out for coffee. So I was like, maybe I should just like do a move within the organization, like where I don't ask for more pay and I'm not asking for a more senior title, but just like, I want to report to somebody who's local that I vibe with, right? So I can grow because I like looked up to her. Very bad idea to think that you can go to HR and try to navigate that. Like the CEO then was like, oh, whatever you're looking for on the other team, we can make happen right here. And I was like, oh no, what did I just do? And the guy in HR, like he had only been in the job for like a year. So he was like, oh, I think Reena, you should just sit down with the CEO. We should have a candid conversation. Like I literally got fired within like 3 to 4 weeks later. Like, and I just felt like it was a shame. So what happened was, the CEO then decided the person who should mentor me was the other girl who was a part-timer, then full-timer. We were on this, like the same level at one point, and she essentially got made a manager overnight, even without a conversation about whether she wanted to be a manager or not. And instead of then mentoring me and like, having those fun coffees that I was hoping to have, it was like her then passing off work onto me that she didn't want to do. And I then like became a report. It was like terrible. And so what I learned from that, one, I was kind of ready to move on to something bigger and brighter. And, hindsight, it was a good time for me to leave. But then my husband ended up having to find another job and leaving too. So I learned a couple things. One, you should probably not work where your husband works. And two, HR is not necessarily the best way to move within an organization. I did learn that there's definitely politics involved, and I hadn't had too many corporate-y type of roles. So
yeah,
I learned that I did not navigate that properly.
Yeah. What you're saying is so the case in so many different companies. I feel like over the last few years, there has started to become more of an awareness of the importance of people, their happiness, their well-being, also being aligned with the positions that they're in, right? Being in positions that complement their strengths, their gifts, and their skills. But this year, I feel like that really came to light a lot more. We obviously have, a long ways to go, but with the change in the work cultures and the working from home, I feel like all of those changes really brought to the forefront a lot of the toxicity that has been happening in the workplace. So I'm confident that those awarenesses that have been brought to light I believe that they're the future of our leadership, right? That will become more and more commonplace. I feel like it takes a higher quality manager to actually be able to manage people remotely versus having them kind of under your thumb right there in the office. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what does conscious leadership mean to you? What do you think the future of that is?
I think it's just being approachable.
Yeah.
As a leader. I think that is a really big piece where people feel like they can talk to you with what's important to them.
I love that. Yeah, I agree with that too. There are so many different qualities, I feel like, in a great leader. I believe that self-awareness serves as the basis, or is kind of like sets the stage for the approachability, for empathy, for all of the other things.
and they need to make time for it. I think we get so busy in what needs to be done, the product, the features of the product, the customer service aspect. But it would be nice if your people and your culture, and like, if that was included in all of our daily concerns.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think good leaders think about that, like actually care about your personal life on some level. I mean, I know it's not encouraged to dig into people's personal lives, but if you've been working in a company for 2 to 3 years and, the leader, your boss, your colleagues that you're talking to every day doesn't wish you a happy birthday or congratulations on having your baby or what's it been like juggling 4 kids at home, you don't have to go deep into what's going on, but I feel like those questions should be asked.
Absolutely. I mean, you're still human. I feel like it's natural that there's going to be some type of overlap happening, right?
For me, I would need that.
Yeah.
My husband's really good at not sharing those things. But I think in order, and on my podcast too, like people are sharing parts of their journey that, may not be professional to share. But I think, like I said, the more vulnerable you are, the more other people will be vulnerable with you and you can connect to them on a deeper level.
I feel like a lot of what we've been talking about with the shifting and potential shifts in workplace cultures have also, especially this last year, prompted a lot of people to kind of rethink what's most important to them. Some people could argue that in our current economy, it might not be a good idea to start a business. I actually think it's the perfect time to start a business. So what would be your advice to those people that are feeling called, feeling guided to kind of go out on their own and do something that brings them joy and that allows them to make a bigger impact?
I am a big fan of a side hustle because, some people don't have the luxury of getting rid of the 9 to 5. And like you and I were talking about, you have to learn how to price yourself. You have to learn how to outsource. You have to learn how to handle, multiple clients. You also have to learn how to work alone when you could be used to having a team. So there are a lot of stages in entrepreneurship. So, I would start by connecting with people, building relationships before you need them, so it doesn't feel rushed as far as the conversations that you want to have with potential clients. A lot of my current clients have happened over a very long period of me knowing them. Like, I worked with one client. We worked together on a television show back in 2007. And she's like, I love what you're doing with your brand. Can you make a version of what you're doing for yourself for me? Like, I've gotten clients like that. We've stayed in touch as friends, as mommies, very casual relationship. But now, she has a business and she sees what I'm doing and she sees that I can help her do things she can't do. I had another guy that I went to Tony Robbins with, and we've just stayed in touch, and he was active in my Facebook group, and he sees kind of some of the wins that I'm having as well. And he was like, I feel like you have a lot of relationships and I'm not good at that piece. I would love to be more in your inner circle of the people that you're connecting with. And yeah, so my advice to people that want to start a business, so much of starting a business is relationships. Like, think about who are already your cheerleaders. Think about the people that will introduce you to others. Like, really kind of invest in those people, talk to those people, ask them what they think of your ideas. That's really at the forefront of starting a business, right? Like, do you have a fan base? Do you have a community? Do you have an idea that your fan base might help you be able to create? Like,
Yeah, which that's great advice. Most of that I did not do when I first started my business. I knew the work that I was meant to do, right? But what you said about relationships is so important because, I mean, now I help people, right? Like align with their path, but also be able to monetize it. And relationships are the number one piece. I see a lot of new entrepreneurs get too hung up on the wrong things to focus on, right? Like the busy work. I would say, as a top priority, right? If you don't have a website, if you don't have anything, focus on connecting with people first.
I don't even think you need a website. I literally only have a website for my podcast.
Yeah. No,
because the way in which I work, I'm so behind the scenes. Like I'm helping other people get seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I have proof that I've been on a ton of podcasts and that I can put a podcast together myself, but I don't so much need to pitch my services because they see, like, I built a Facebook group of close to 600 people since March, and they see that, I've booked guests like Howard Schultz on a top podcast. You know what I mean? So like the work that I've done kind of like speaks for itself, where I don't necessarily, could I get more clients? Probably by having a website, but yeah.
Well, just the whole point being that a website could probably be helpful if you look to optimize it, right? I have one, I haven't optimized it. It's a great place to house my courses and my services and all of that kind of stuff. But that's not where my time is spent. I spend time talking to people.
I feel like that's the most important piece is, the people that you're connected to, what do they need help with? And
exactly.
Does that interest you? Is that something that, lights you up and, is in your zone of genius that you can help somebody else with? The biggest piece is having people come to you with things they need help with, because if people trust you to do that, you're in business.
Exactly. And you had mentioned something, right, about doing what lights you up. I think you had said that. That's so important because sometimes people, when they get into business, for themselves, they get into it for the wrong reasons, right? Like you should become an entrepreneur because you're about to start a journey doing something that feeds your soul, right? That really lights you up inside. But some people get into business thinking, well, if I do this thing, then I can make money or whatever. And yes, you have to make money, but it's a lot harder to do something when you're not in it because you love it.
You talk about intention. Intention is, for me, a really big thing. My intention is, for everyone who works with me to make a difference in their life and make them better than they were before coming to me.
That's what it's all about. And especially if you are in the service industry, right? The know, like, trust, the relationships. Even people, rarely ever have I had anyone approach me to hire me that I didn't know. Most of the time when people connect with me, they will say, I've been following you for a couple of years. I watch your videos all the time, or I listen to your podcast. It's almost always someone who has familiarized themselves with my work up to some point. And another point I think is really important to mention, especially because there's so many more people getting into business in the online space, is that often those people are not even the people that are engaging on your content.
True. Oh my God. I got such a bad message. Well, something that could be like really improved upon today on LinkedIn. And I wanted to bring it up because it goes along with what you're saying. This is like how you've probably seen so many bad pitches on LinkedIn, but like somebody who's going into business should not connect with someone generically and then the follow-up message be something like, hey, have you ever thought about like being more productive and hiring a VA? And like, you know what I mean?
You're like, yeah, probably a million times.
Right? Like, without me even telling her what I'm looking for, pitching her services. Like that is a very good way not to get business.
But that's a good example of someone who is likely not being authentic in their approach, right? Because there are no shortcuts to building relationships. There just aren't. It's about showing up consistently and being clear in your message.
And also having a bit of allure. Like, I'm casting this new YouTube podcast series, and I had this guy say, oh, hey, you know, I got tagged in the post, and like me and these other 2 people are just going to show up. I was like, are you interested in being a part of it? I'd love to have a conversation with you. Like, it's not like, hey, you're instantly cast. You know what I mean? Like, I want you to know that like working with me or like being a part of my production is like a selective process. Like,
Right.
So I think that's another piece of like entrepreneurship, is not just saying yes to everyone and having a bit of allure.
Yeah. So for people getting out on their own, right, it would be get honest with yourself about what you really want. Even if you question whether or not it's possible, know that it is. Something else that I say often that I believe with my whole heart is that God doesn't put dreams on our heart that aren't meant to be achieved. Like, you're not having this idea or imagining this thing because you're crazy or it doesn't mean anything, you know? So I feel like if people started out being honest with themselves about what they really want, you know, that would make all the difference. And then
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and then know that success doesn't happen overnight.
I love the quote too. That's like, what was meant to be yours will be yours.
Yeah.
So believe that.
Yes. Believe it.
I love that quote, you know, because I feel like a lot of times we try to force things to happen, and there is a flow state to like not, you know, not being so much in control. Like, if you let go of some of that, things actually come together better.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. It's so true. Get comfortable also with uncertainty.
Yeah, COVID's taught us that.
That's a whole new level of uncertainty. Yes. Be adaptable.
You know, in the beginning of COVID, one thing I loved about COVID is like, people have become a lot more understanding about canceling meetings or having a sick child or needing to reschedule.
That's a good thing. Yes.
It's such a good thing. And truthfully, we shouldn't have to freaking explain ourselves so much like we were before. And how many jobs have I gone to for an interview where they're like, nope, only work in person or only be in the office? That has now changed probably forever. Like, when I see people even posting a job now on LinkedIn that's like, looking for a social media manager in-house, I'm like, I am going to apply for that just to have the conversation.
Yeah. About, what do you envision that in-house thing looking like?
Yeah.
Reena, I loved our conversation today.
Me too.
If someone wants to get in touch with you directly or learn more about what you're up to, where's the best place for them to go?
I am a LinkedIn-aholic, so I am on there all the time. Reena Friedman Watts on LinkedIn, or I do own the Reena at bettercalldaddy.com.
Awesome. Yes, and I recommend definitely checking out her podcast. I enjoyed listening to it. Thank you, Reena, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. This has been a blast.
Thank you for listening to the Awaken on Purpose podcast. Please visit me and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or at awakenonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can live your purpose and make an impact as a conscious leader, visit me at jenniferspore.com, and while you're there, be sure to join my email list for exclusive offers and a weekly dose of inspiration.